One of my captors felt no emotion. He did not hesitate to inflict pain. Now, all he feels is intense, unstoppable agony.
Spirit is spent.
This is the key to a crucible that stretches the sanity of the mind.
Strong words from a strong man, Captain Insano.
Marijuana, fellow exiles. We are going to do more of a mechanics showcase than a build guide. This would be my first attempt at a quote-unquote official build guide, so be brutally honest, let me know how I do in the comments. We're going to try to cruise through this thing efficiently, so I did actually prepare some notes to not make it painstakingly hard to watch. But we're going to break it down into sections. Basically the build overview, the gems, links, and gear for the passive tree, the Ascendancy, Pantheons, and the pros and cons of the build. So what are we doing? We're doing a poisonous concoction of bouncing on an almost immortal champion. I still have a few tweaks to make, but we're pretty much there, and we're almost running T17s quite comfortably. Let's take a look at the interaction just as a poisonous skill itself. Now, traditional poisonous concoction is a great league start skill, and it's very fun to play. If you've ever played any kind of poison build, you understand that it's very zoomy. You get the withering step, it feels comfy. If you can get poison prolif or explodes, the clear feels even better. Poisonous concoction of bouncing functions a little bit differently. Instead of added projectiles causing a shotgun effect with AoE overlaps, dealing large instants of poisons at a time, poisonous concoction of bouncing only throws out one projectile, and the amount of added projectiles is only going to affect the number of times that the poisonous concoction chains. When it chains, it's going to bounce, and then it's going to bounce in random directions. So the more projectiles we can add to it, the more chains, the more bounces. The more AoE overlaps, the more poison applications, or better. Now, the quality of poisonous concoction of bouncing is actually really good. 20% chance to inflict withered for 2 seconds on hit. Some people combine that with the wither mastery, giving an additional 5% chance when you apply a wither to apply up to 15 stacks. If you are applying a lot of withers all at once, it's basically perma wither uptime, especially when it comes to single target. I, however, have not taken that mastery because we are stretched on this skill tree, and you will see why here shortly. Playstyle is very fun, chaotic, and messy. Lots of AoE overlaps, as you can see. And when you can add Explode into your build, it's going to feel much better for the clear. It's not bad without it, but it's definitely poggers when you do get this node. Not a whole lot when it comes to button presses. We do have Plague Bearer that we need to be aware of maintaining its uptime. It's just a great amount of damage added to your clear and single target. And with a couple of casts of your Peaconk, it's going to top it all the way back up to full. You almost double tap your Plague Bearer when it runs out. We do take advantage of Blood Rage to generate frenzy charges. So the playstyle could be very zoomy when it comes to clearing, and for the single target it could be a little jarring if you're not familiar with how to get your ramp up when it comes to adding your poison layering and getting some good poison ramp. But overall, this has just been a fun passion project of mine, trying to get something to synergize with this combo for the gloves and the chest piece. With that being said, let's hop into the gearing section and talk about what makes this build function. So the main item that we're building around in this build is going to be the Victario's Influence Lacquered Garb. What makes this so interesting, you're getting a massive 50% increase effect of your auras from the level 30 Generosity. One thing I'd like to note is you do not need this chest piece to be 6-linked if you are going to do a defensive aura setup like I am. However, there are people that are using this to do mind shenanigans, and I believe there's some smite stuff that's going on because smite does get the benefit from the aura effect. But if you're doing defensive links, defensive gems in the chest piece, they do not need to be linked. Wanted to make sure that that was clear if anyone does try to attempt to make this build. And on that note, it is incredibly hard at the time of recording to find a double corrupt that has the +2 level of socketed AoE gems and the +1 to level of socketed gems. This build is still going to feel great and function without the double corrupt, but I would aim to get at least one of those. Obviously, the +2 is going to be better, but anything you can get that's going to synergize or benefit will still function. The main reason we want so many gem levels for my setup is so that we can get our Purity Fire up to 85 max res. Now, normally when you have an aura that's supported by Generosity, it doesn't affect you, it only affects your minions or your allies. We're able to override this little downside by taking advantage of the new uniques, the Hands of Fresha. The line at the very bottom says non-curse auras from your skills only apply to you and your linked targets. It's very specific. It says only apply to you and your linked targets. That one little line right there basically overrides the downside of Generosity and gives us the ability to benefit from that 50% increase effective aura. And it's massive. Combined with the Ascendancy, some aura effect on the tree, and my Anoint, we are at 96% increase effect of auras on us. So with our defenses solved, with 2 items, we need the ability to deal a butt ton of damage. Because we're using our chest piece as our defensive layering, we need the ability to apply our damage dealing ability elsewhere. The other gentleman that's doing the dual strike of ambidextry uses the graveyard to craft himself supported skills onto a one-hander weapon, giving him a pseudo 6-link, and that's how he's able to accomplish that build. I have, however, opted to go for a Forbidden Shaco. Now, these aren't too terrible. I think I paid about 1 divine, maybe 3 divine for mine. I think it was around 3 divine. But something along these lines will work as long as it functions. The main thing I want to press upon here is you want added projectiles. So if you can get socketed gems are supported by GMP, LMP, volley, greater volley, chain even. Chain will still function. The more projectiles, the more chain bounces. Chain itself is just going to grant it chain. So it essentially functions the same as added projectiles. And then you would want to get something that's going to be complementary. Now, level 5 Unbound Ailments might sound pretty poopy. However, we're only really interested in that very top line that says 35% increased duration of ailments inflicted with supported skills. So it basically functions. Not ideal, not the best of the best, but it functions. So with level 29 greater multiple projectiles and a level 5 unbound ailments, we are linking to Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing. We also have Void Manipulation, Deadly Ailments, and Vicious Projectiles, giving us our pseudo 6 link. Moving on to a couple more tech things that are happening in this build, because this build is full of tech, is going to be the combination of Alyssa's Delight and Relication Patience. Now, this has been circulating around this league, and it's very known that this is potentially bugged. Basically, what it is this belt turns your frenzy charges into affliction charges. And without the boots on, it functions just like that. When you add the boots on, it basically counts you as having the frenzy charges, and then the belt gives you affliction charges on top of that. So it's like a double dip. You're getting frenzies and you're also getting your afflictions. Potentially broken, potentially patched next league for anyone who's trying to do frenzy charge stack poison interaction. It tends to be pretty broken, and this is one of the #1 archetypes for the Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing. This is going to be a very, very large portion of our damage, and that is because Alyssa's Delight grants 8% more damage with ailments per affliction charge. So we have a total of 7 on the tree, which, if my 3rd grade math kicking in is any benefit, 56% more damage with ailments. So effectively, it's a 56% more damage multiplier with our current setup at 7 charges. On top of the defensive layering that we're getting from our almost 100% increased effective auras on us, we're also taking advantage of the Machination, Anyway, this is by far one of the most interesting items that I've gotten to play with since I've been playing Path of Exile. I've never messed with a Mahuxotl's Machination before, and this thing is quite a lot of fun if you can get it into your build. With this item, we are mainly trying to get Divine Flesh, and we're going to make sure that we can build around the other downsides / upsides of having so many different keystones allocated. What Divine Flesh does gives you 50% of elemental damage taken as chaos damage, and it also gives you +5 to maximum chaos resistance. So that one notable right there, Divine Flesh, makes it to where I do not take 50% of elemental damage. It's given to me as chaos, which is why it is essential to cap your chaos resistance and even pick up the mastery +1 to maximum chaos resistance, which will put you at a max of 81% chaos resistance. The main reason why we want Divine Flesh is so that we can get the Lethal Pride Timeless Jewel that grants us Tempered by War. This one states 50% of cold and lightning damage is taken as fire damage. So 50% of our elemental is being taken as chaos damage, and another 50% of cold and lightning damage is taken as fire damage, which basically means all we need to worry about is our fire resistance, and we don't have to worry about taking cold or lightning damage. As long as we have max fire res and we can mitigate the amount of chaos damage we have incoming, we will be a-okay. And the last little piece of tech for the defensive layering is going to be the Defiance of Destiny Paw Amulet. High rolls of this amulet are still going for pretty high prices. I can't remember what I got my 32% for, probably in the realm of 5 to 10 divine, if I recall correctly. This is actually my first time playing with this amulet, and boy howdy am I in love. Gained 32% of missing unreserved life before being hit by an enemy is probably one of the best mechanics in the game. It's like a one-shot prevention. So every time you're about to get hit, if you already have like a big chunk missing and you're just getting lots of hits coming at you, you're going to keep procking up that gain 32%. It just makes it really smooth for this type of character that doesn't have any regen. I'm basically pigeonholed into Leech because of the shield, and it's just a really welcome addition to this build as far as an added defensive layer. And last but not least, the last little bit of tech that we're doing is the Midnight Bargain weapon swap. That's giving us our adrenaline. Or when we're mapping, we also like to do a Bisco's leash swap so that we can generate rampage while we're having fun mapping and doing delirium and other shenanigans like that. So lots of tech in this build. And the only two rares, a Vermilion Ring, Iolite Ring, or however you pronounce that. Basically what you want on these two pieces is you want to just solve every other problem that you got, which is really not that hard, and it's probably going to be accuracy and chaos resistance and mana cost of skills. Now I have been screwing around with my auras, and I just put precision in here, max level, which is why my mana is actually looking pretty chunky right now. This build has usually been looking like more like 25 to 40 available mana, maybe like somewhere around there. Very iffy with like the fitting of the auras. But once we took Mechawaddle's Machination and we got the Lethal Pride, we were able to drop the other Purity auras and just focus on Purity of Fire, which gave us the ability to put in the Precision, solving most of our accuracy issues and freeing up more passive points on the tree. With that being said, let's go over to the skill tree and take a look at what we're pathing. Now, if you've ever played any type of poison build before, or poisonous concoction build, you kind of know the lay of the land. I'm going to kind of go over this as if somebody who's never played poisonous concoction. Basically, the number one name of the game is we need to be able to hit. We want to get our accuracy figured out, which is why we have the precision running. But usually you would take accuracy nodes and get your accuracy figured out that way. So if you can't hit, you can't poison, you can't do damage. Very simple. The other caveat to this is you need to be able to poison. If you can't poison, you're not getting your damage layering, you're not getting your ramp up. So we need to be able to reach 100% poison chance as soon as humanly possible. So these two nodes, Fatal Toxins and the Swift Venoms, is going to get you to, I believe, 90%. Since Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing already has a baked in 40% chance, we just have to make up the rest of the 60 through our tree, which we do through Fatal Toxins and Swift Venoms. A couple of jewels with chance to poison on hit, and we're off to the races. This character currently is sitting at 99% chance to poison because I don't want to talk about it. I would say two more very important things if you're running Poisonous Concoction of any kind is you need to sustain your life flasks. Poisonous Concoction is going to consume your flask charges to give you a % of your total life recovery as added chaos damage. So we want to be able to mitigate that downside as much as possible. With Poisonous Concoction of Bouncing, you consume 8 charges per projectile fired from 1 life flask if possible. With the amount of attack speed you're getting, 8 charges, 8 charges, 8 charges, you can see it's going to add up. So some of the most valuable nodes on the tree, and basically makes it to where you can spam the shit out of your skills without dropping off too bad, is going to be these 3 combos right here. Field Medicine, that is huge. Life Flasking a charge when you hit an enemy no more than once each second. This is probably one of the biggest nodes that you can get for a Peacock character. Equally as huge is going to be Replenishing Remedies. This is going to give you life flask charges are gained passively every 3 seconds, or a total of 4 life flask charges gained every 3 seconds, just in this one notable here. We need to take Careful Conservationalist. This is going to apply to all flasks in general, but it's going to make it to where you don't use as many flask charges when you cast your ability, and you're also going to generate more flask charges through Careful Conservationalist. Very valuable node here. Oh, and last but not least, mention Entrenched. It's going to give you increased recovery from life flask, and it's also going to give you an additional 3 charges when you suppress spell damage. So these 4 notables in combination, plus the Minor God Pantheon, basically make it to where you don't have to worry about your life flasks dropping off. However, that being said, many people still like to run 2 life flasks just to have that added layer of protection. When I'm mapping, or, honestly, I just don't really care about dying that bad, I only run the 1 because I'd rather have utility flasks, and as long as you have something that removes corrupting blood or just gives you something, it'll function. So that's up to you. If you want to run 2 life flasks, be super safe. You're doing uber fighting, that's cool. It's probably what I do if I'm doing, really intense bossing and stuff like that. However, if I'm just mapping, this is my setup. I just go for the utilities and the 1 life flask. Another thing to mention with this build, with the shield and the usage of the Tempered by War, we are getting a Keystone Vol Pact from the shield, so we really need to work out that little downside that we don't regenerate life anymore. Our life behaves more like energy shield because of other Keystone notables that are on the shield. Basically what it means is that we are pigeonholed into life leech. So essentially we are going to need to take the life leech mastery up in this wheel. Now, debating if my mana sustain can handle it or not, these 3 points, I think I'd rather have them here for Vitality Void. This is going to give you a huge amount of increased total, or increased maximum total life recovery per second from leech, and increased total recovery per second. It's much better if you're basically pigeonholed into Vol Pact. So I think I'm going to drop those points out of the top if I can make sure my mana sustain is alright. I think it'll be alright with that little 4%er here. So I'd much rather have these nodes than these ones up top. However, this is 3 points and this is 4 points, so pick and choose your battles. It is what it is. Grabbing as many life masteries on the tree. I am going to pick up the 10% more max, or 15% increased max life if there are no life modifiers on equipped body armor. I'm just really squeezed for points right now, and I'm level 85, so my last points will probably go into that, and probably more suppression. Now, because we're stacking so many auras, we are going to need to take charisma, and we're also going to anoint sovereignty. The number one problem with this build is it's kind of like an aura stacker, more or less, and we are going to need as much reservation efficacy of skills as possible. And we also want to get little bits of increased effective aura where we can. We're not getting much from this tree, but we're getting so much from the gearing itself that we're almost to 100% increased effective auras, which is just fine by my standards. And because we're squeezing so many auras, we do need to take a mana mastery for an additional 12% increased reservation efficacy of skills. Very valuable. And last but not least, one of the most important masteries that you grab in this build is going to be the projectiles deal 20% increased damage with hits and ailments for each time they have chained. I think we're at a total of 6 chains, so that could be anywhere, you know, effectively can get up to 120% increase effect of ailments, which is super nice. This notable right here, or this mastery right here, feels very good. You take this off, you're probably losing like 40 to 50% damage. It's that big. I mean, maybe not that much, but it's huge. It's a good chunk of your damage. You want to get this mastery. Other things to note is we are frenzy charge stacking, so we're grabbing all the frenzies on the tree. Grab as much life as you can on the tree, obviously. And with the last remaining bit of points, we are going to try to get as much spell suppress as possible and go lucky, because we're not going to be able to reach cap. Maybe with tattoos, I don't know if they have suppression tattoos, but we're going to try to get up as high as possible. We'll probably end up being like in the 80s with lucky. And that's pretty okay by my standards. Now, since we're already here, let's just hop into the jewel setups. Number one thing is we need to get a Lethal Pride Timeless Jewel. These things are a pain in the ass to look up. I am not that good at Path of Building. I'm still learning it. I never really used it when I was on console. I just kind of plugged and played. That's just my style. I find something on YouTube or some kind of interaction I like, and I just, you know, I get the blinders on and I just go and I start playing the game. But Lethal Pride Timeless Jewel, these things are a pain in the ass to find. You don't really need anything specific, just solve issues you need solving, and the only prerequisite I would say is Tempered by War. So it's going to be a Rakiata, commanded by Rakiata, and, you know, conquered by the Karui. I don't know, numbers mean numbers, but there's just, you know, you import, you copy the jewel, and then you double check in your POB, make sure it's going to give you stuff you like, buy the cheapest one that gives you the functionality, and get going. That's how you thrift store a POB. But this Lethal Pride Timeless Jewel is actually giving me some pretty decent stuff. I'm pretty strength starved, so we have lots of strength everywhere, and that's basically, you know, happy camper. We're probably not going to take that, but you get the idea. We want lots of strength, things that are useful. Fire res is useful. All these are strength points, and then Tempered by War. Moving on over here to the Parandus Pact. This is a chaos damage per Andis Pact, and with this allocated in this wheel right here, we're getting probably around 100% increased chaos damage. I can't remember, it's like 19 notables I counted or something like that. Anyway, it's around 100% increased chaos damage. Incredibly valuable jewel this league, and these can be pretty pricey. I don't know, I kind of just see the price tag and I say, here's the money. If I had to guess, it's like maybe like 6 divine, something like that. I don't know. I'll do a total of prices at the end of this video, and we'll see how much this whole thing cost me. And then moving on over to the cluster setup. Now, this is going to make or break this functionality because we need lots of aura reservation efficacy of skills. The main thing I want to say is we are taking advantage of 2 small clusters that are going to have sublime form and mortifying aspect. This could be a determination one that would function for my needs. But Malevolence is good as well because I don't have a Divine Blessing setup, so Malevolence on my chest is great, plus I'm getting like 100% increase effect of the aura, and I don't have access to a lot of the damage scaling that other Ascendancies have access to, so putting Malevolence in the chest piece is like chef's kiss. 100% increase effect of Malevolence, the fuck out of here. It's good shit. And then with the Grace, just giving you a massive boost to evasion, and it's also, you know, taking up a lot of your mana, so get 2 of your large 50%ers out of the way, and you should be fine. The large cluster jewel, basically the only thing I was looking for was the unspeakable gifts, just so I can get Explodey while I map, and Explodey feels good, makes build feel good, and makes me happy boy. I didn't really care too much about the other 2 notables, just something that's functional. Preferably, I'd rather have the Splodey somewhere closer, that way I didn't have to take these 2 points. But when I'm looking at it in the grand scheme of things, there really isn't a whole lot of damage source for my character, so even if I had unstoppable gifts in one of these earlier notables, I'd probably end up taking these 2 points anyways because I need the damage. I'm a champion, I don't have access to a lot of the damage that other people have access to, so we're going to take these 2 points either way. Now the medium is literally just chaos res and increased damage over time. So if you can get a medium with Student of Decay, then, you know, good job. We need to get to our chaos resistance capped. So Student of Decay is actually incredibly valuable for my setup, but this is literally the only thing I need is just those 2 points just for additional chaos resistance and damage over time. So it works out. And that's the skill tree. I would recommend utilizing your tattoos where you can. I'm getting avoid poison, avoid bleed, global accuracy. That's going to be huge for my build. I need accuracy, so that's really nice getting those. This little point right here is intentional. I don't have phasing any other way, and this basically frees up my flasks to be more damage dealing. Let's hop over to the Ascendancy of choice, and that is going to be the Champion. The main reason we pick Champion is for the big juicy, and you guessed it, 30% increase effect of non-curse auras from your skills. Remember, we're getting 50% from the generosity on the chest piece. We're getting 30% from the Ascendancy. We're getting 10% from Sovereignty Anoint, and then we're getting the remaining 6 from the passive skill tree, putting us at a grand total of 96% increase effect of non-curse auras from your skills. Can I get an amen? Of course, since we're champion, we're going to take first to strike, last to fall. This notable here is pretty cool. If I'm running T17s, I don't really even do the weapon swap to get the adrenaline. And I'm sure the people that, you know, are grinding on this game can tell you why that is. I don't need to weapon swap in T17s. I just get my first to strike, last to fall to proc all the time. Basically, the way this functions is when you drop to low life, which is 50% at a baseline, you get adrenaline. you recover 25% of your life when you do gain adrenaline. So when you do drop that low, you're going to get an instant chunk back up. So it's not going to be like, you're not going to react in time for like the oh shit one shot, but it's going to zonk you back up for that extra 25. Plus, if you're getting hit again on top of that, our Defiance of Destiny is proccing as well. So we're pretty unkillable. And I say that, but I still die in T17s, but we're pretty up there. But First to Strike, Last to Fall is going to be a huge damage increase for us because we get 100% increased damage and 25% increased attack and cast speed for, what is it, 20 seconds? Yeah, it's huge. So putting a weapon swap that drops you to half HP, proccing your adrenaline, is very nice while mapping. And while you're running T17s, you don't really need a weapon swap because you're probably going to drop to 50% HP just by being in a T17. So incredibly valuable First to Strike, Last to Fall. And if used with the weapon swap tech, we're actively adding 100% increased damage to our build and 25% increased attack and movement speed. Super, super nice notable here. And the last ones, we're obviously getting Perma Fortitude because Perma Fortitude. Now for Pantheons, you could do a couple of things. I don't have freeze immunity. Probably going to get it on a flask somewhere. But with First to Strike, Last to Fall, I basically have pseudo elemental immunities either way. And when it comes to running harder content, it's all right for me to get frozen and drop to half HP because of my adrenaline. First to Strike, Last to Fall. And the only thing I'd say that this build has issues with is going to be damage over time. So once I switched over to Soul of Our Kali, it felt a lot better running the higher tier maps, Minotaurs, the Guardians, doing T17s. I'm still dying to one-shots and things that I'm not sure when it comes to like mechanics, but as far as like just your pity little guy deaths, they're pretty much gone once I went to Soul of Our Kali. So dot damage is probably going to be one of our biggest weak points, and so we take this. We are stun immune just from being champion, and we're pseudo freeze immune from adrenaline. So it's kind of poopy. I know this, I don't know, would probably set some people off that I'm not freeze immune running T17s, but I'm not actually running T17s on this, but you know, basically what I'm saying is just work around and try to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure out this build. As I said in the beginning of the video, this is more of like a highlight of mechanics and functionality rather than, hey, this is a guide, go play this build. This is more like, hey, I'm crazy and I put this build together, but look what I did. Isn't this wild? And most importantly is going to be the Soul of Rislatha. Any Poisonous Concoction player will tell you that this is the go-to for poison builds. Any dot build, really. And I would say, honestly, the biggest thing that makes this feel good is the bottom line, actually. The enemies you hit recently have 50% reduced life regeneration. For dot builds, this basically just means 50% more damage against enemies that regen life is huge. And it basically makes it to where, you know, we can tank down those big rares a lot quicker, get on to the next pack, try not to lose our rampage, yada yada. Soul of Rislatha is the way to go. Another thing I want to highlight when coming to Poisonous Concoction builds is big number as far as how much life you recover is good. So that top portion right there that says 4464, that's the number that the Poisonous Concoction is scaling. So add chaos damage equal to 16% of Flask's recovery amount, which is why we want to put the recovery amount as high as possible. Now, one thing I want to show is that this is not the optimal flask. This is functional, it's usable. Yes, PoE elites. I did go to the thrift store and bought a wooden golf club and still drove the ball farther than you. Holy moly. My thrift store setup flask is simply here just because I do not have Corrupting Blood immunity. This is what you're aiming for as far as recovery amount. The saturated is going to be the most optimal, the most elite pleasing, and a 30%er is going to be even more so. With a max roll, which this is a max roll, a T1 increase amount recovered, on a 30% quality, I believe this gets around to about 5,200, maybe even higher, 5,200 life recovered. So that percentage from the poisonous concoction is scaling off that large number recovered. It's adding it to your damage. It's not like the end of the world. I've seen plenty of P-Conk players play poisonous concoction without life flasks. However, it's something that we want to add because we're champion and we are lacking damage. So any little bits of damage where we can get it are great for me. However, I don't need everything to be perfect, so I'm just going to run with this one until I can craft a better flask or get a better flask. This was my attempt, and it didn't work. Burning is pretty good because we're taking all this fire damage, so this would probably be the best bet. And then you would also get rid of, or you'd solve your bleed elsewhere, and you would put burning. This would probably be the best bet. However, I failed my corrupt, and yeah, we're still going to use it until we get something better, but we have to solve corrupting blood first. So I just wanted to highlight that this is not the optimal flask. I know. This one could have been the most optimal flask, but this one is not NOT. X out this flask. However, it functions, so it works. That's why I'm using it. Then we have our endless ruby flask. Basically, we want the mandatory things here. We want a granite and a jade. We want to be able to get lots of percent increase armor, percent increase mana where we can in our flask. Usually I like to keep things nice and tight. Like I want the armor on the granite. I want the the evasion on the jade, attack speed on the, this quicksilver, or not quicksilver, but the attack speed on the silver, and then whatever's useful on the ruby. In this case, it's going to be the evasion because the curse effect is on the jade flask. Anyway, you get the idea. Reduce effective curse is really valuable. Percent increase armor, percent increase evasion, very valuable, and increase attack speed. Because we get so little sources of speed and damage with this build, because we're so stretched so thinly on the passive skill tree, we take little bits where we can get it, and attack speed on a silver flask with additional charges or reduced charges used is probably going to be the best bet. Now, a little caveat I want to add for flasks that have higher consumption of flask than the other traditional flasks, like your silvers, amethyst, is you really want to get percent reduced charges per use or more charges, like actual just more charges on the flask, because you want to get 2 charges out of the flask rather than just the 1. This is barely there, and it just drives me nuts. You don't understand, like when I see these unoptimal comments, you guys don't realize how I beat myself up about it all the time. But the fact that I am using 34 of 60 charges just grinds my gears. However, in practice, as soon as you use the flask, it's like basically right back at half, because it's almost there. It's almost 2 charges. So it functions, but we definitely want a better flask. And that basically concludes the flask setup. And as far as rounding up with the gear and whatnot, I know I didn't go over a whole lot when it comes to the shield and how all the different keystone notables affect you. I just figure if you're going to use this shield, do your own due diligence and figure out if it's going to function for what you're trying to go with. So, what are my thoughts as far as like this build, and how have I been enjoying it thus far in the league? I think this is, it's just a really interesting skill. It's very fun to tweak with. What I'm probably going to end up doing is rolling like a Pathfinder or a Trickster, going full into the frenzy charge stacking and trying to get out as much damage as possible, or maybe do some other shenanigans. But I do have a lot of interesting stuff to play with, and at the bottom line, I would say, is this build worth playing? Probably not. Is it worth playing on a different character? Probably so. Are these 2 items worth picking up to mess around with a champion and do your own shenanigans? Absolutely. I'm probably going to end up rolling another character, putting the Poisonous Concoction gear on them, and trying to figure out something else to do with this guy, because this is kind of like my little playground character. So the only 2 gear pieces I want are these. These can go on a different character. That's fine. And, yeah, I'll do something else with this. But this setup is basically the coolest shit I've played with in a while. So I highly recommend getting your own glove and chest combo together and playing around with all these different skills that we have and seeing what kind of combos you come up with. This has been a really fun passion project of mine because I just love Poisonous Concoction so much, and this is my first time trying out the new Transfigured. I don't know, I had a lot of fun making this build, and we're going to tweak it a little bit more, get it T17 ready and T17 viable so that we can actually test it and see how it feels like on the top end of stuff. But I have a feeling that by the time I get to play again, I'm mostly going to be looking into this shield, trying to figure out other ways that I can use it and abuse it and take advantage of some of these keystone mechanics. So as of right now, build feels alright, feels pretty chunky. You saw the Minotaur, it's not that bad. I was scaredy when I was doing the Minotaur fight in the very beginning video, just because I didn't want to screw it up. But honestly, like I ran some stuff off recording off stream or whatever, and yeah, it definitely feels really good. And I'm trying to think of anything that I missed. Oh yeah, for those looking at my life pool, shut up. It's going to be over 3,000 once I get my... I need another skill point for the life mastery. Believe me, it's driving me nuts that it's not 3k at least. But because of Champion, we have so much damage mitigation. I don't know what our EHP is. I'm actually kind of curious. So anyone in the comments who wants to, you know, POB my guy and tell me what my EHP is, actually, I would appreciate that. I'm not really good at path of building. I'm still kind of learning it. So take it easy on me. I will link the path of building. It's not going to be configured. I'm just going to put like the raw POB and then I'll select the skill, and then I mean I don't know, maybe I'll mess with it today and then add it in there, but for the most part I'm just going to add the link. You guys can configure it all you want. The numbers are just going to be whatever the fuck they are. I don't know that shit as well as you guys, so if someone in the comments wants to, you know, min-max my numbers and tell me what I'm at, I'm actually more than curious. I'm really curious what they are, so if somebody wants to do that for me, I would appreciate it. Let me know how I did them in the comments on my very first, you know, build guide / mechanics showcase. Yeah, and if you like the style and, you know, off the cuff style stuff from just a pure gamer at heart, do me a favor and hit that like, subscribe, and follow. You know, we like to have fun over on this channel and poke fun at the PoE elitists. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and end it right there, and hopefully I didn't forget anything. I'm sure I will when I go back and I edit this, and I'm just gonna be like, oh fuck, so whatever. Anyway, peace out, Ray Class. Bye bye.